Now, Pavoratii was...
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, Pavoratii, and we're here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. And today we're going to take that discussion a little bit deeper and go even beyond. But as a disclaimer, this channel is for entertainment purposes. These are my opinions, not here to slander anyone. So let's get started. Now, yesterday I put out a video where I reconstructed the actual PCA into a timeline that correlated with the events that really took place in the investigations at the correct times. If you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend go back and watch it and be patient with it. It's a long one, and we get into some details you're already going to be familiar with, but if you're patient with it, watch it all the way through, I think your eyes will be opened to a new way to look at old facts. And what's interesting is the original PCA and how it was presented to us and how the media presented it to us. I mean, they literally took everything in that very poorly written, obviously bogus PCA, and they created the media narrative around it. And what's interesting is they took everything in there and presented it in that order like it was the facts of life. Now, I remember a time when news reporters, I mean, it was their job to be investigative reporters. They didn't just take what the government gave them at face value and present it as facts. They would actually investigate themselves. If they would have investigated what I've investigated just in the PCA alone, more questions than answers would have arisen, and maybe we wouldn't be at the point that we're at right now in this case. But in today's day and times, those things don't take place like they used to. They're handed something from law enforcement or the government, and they're probably handed instructions with it when they get it. And then they mold everything around that. And we got to start asking ourselves why. Because normal citizens like you and I, when we see things taking place, people on trial for crimes, and then we watch the mainstream media's narrative of what's taking place in these crimes, and then we see that they're either found innocent or guilty, just like the mainstream media portrayed everything, we assume everything is correct. I mean, because why wouldn't we? Everything seems to line up. But it takes a case like this where we really dig in to see that things aren't lining up at all. And we got to figure out what's the problem with that and how can it be fixed. But take this case, for example. Let's take that original PCA. And you take the timeline of events that was listed in that PCA that we've obviously, my favorite word, debunked at this point. But look at what mainstream media did with that PCA. They would create movie narratives to go along with the PCA, and it would convince us that they were actually correct. Take a look.
There's been a lot of speculation and rumors. We're the official source of information. Individuals who are being harassed in this situation. People need to be careful.
Another early focus of the investigation was video. Detectives gathered recordings from homes, businesses all around the time of the murders in that area, and one thing stood out. One vehicle stood out. That was a white Hyundai Elantra.
We're looking for that car because we believe through our investigation that that car was in the area during the time of the murders.
According to investigators, beginning at 3:29 a.m., the white Elantra made 3 separate passes by the house on King Road. Then, at 4:04, they say it was back for a 4th time, stopping in front of the house before traveling on to do a 3-point turn. It then drove past the house again and out of the camera's view. At 4:20, it was back in view and leaving the area at a high rate of speed.
So everyone's looking for this car, this White Elantra, and there's an officer, a campus police officer from Washington State University, across the state border, who decides to run a list of all the White Elantras on campus. And he finds one. It's registered to a guy named Bryan Kohberger.
They end up finding his car in the parking lot of Kohberger's campus apartment. When they run his name, they find that he had been pulled over twice in the months before the murders, once in Moscow and once in Pullman.
Hello. Sir. Hi, I'm Officer Loangus. Stops being audio and video recorded.
I was just slightly into the crosswalk, so... Yeah, where I'm from Pennsylvania, we actually don't have, like, crosswalks.
Oh.
So even if you're kind of slightly... Yeah, there's a little bit more leeway as well. Like, there are a few lines. Like, there's one white line and there's another one. Like, there's, like, a certain margin from which you can actually kind of put your vehicle, place your vehicle.
During the traffic stop in Moscow, Kohberger gave the officer his cell phone number.
Now, when you get a phone number, it changes everything because you get access to it in a different way. That's one more piece of evidence, one more piece of the puzzle. Is it enough to see what the puzzle says? Not necessarily, but you're getting closer.
According to investigators, Kohberger's phone records showed that between 2:27 a.m. and 4:48 a.m. the morning of the murders, Kohberger's phone was turned off or in airplane mode or possibly out of battery, but it wasn't connecting to any cell phone tower.
Sometimes it's not about evidence. It's about the lack of evidence that actually matters. In this particular case, we had a cell phone that was turned off for a very specific window of time. During a window of time where 4 people were murdered and he is the singular suspect. That means something.
Investigators say that when they looked back at Kohberger's cell phone records in the 5 months leading up to the murders, that his phone was in the area of the girl's home on 12 separate occasions.
This was not just something where he happened to be in the region one time and it's easily explainable. The problem is now you really have to be able to explain that other dozen times the month before. You better have a pretty good reason for this.
Coming up, the arrest.
How are you feeling?
How strong is the evidence against Bryan Kohberger?
You read the affidavit, you just find out that he was stalking them, he was hunting them. He was just a person looking for an opportunity.
Imagine what happens when you're finally able to get the results of the DNA sample. We've got this guy. We've got this guy.
We don't know when and how this DNA got there. I'm not at all worried about the DNA.
There it was, right out there in the open for us to see. I mean, they were leading us down a path and we were following it like little lost sheep. And I got to ask myself, I mean, how do we stop this from happening? Well, the only way we can stop something from happening is first we got to recognize there's a problem. I think we're at that point. Then we have to figure out what the solution is to that problem and the steps that need to be taken to get to that solution. Now, I never want to get political on here, but I have to address this because I've had several people post in my comment section how they don't appreciate President Trump as my intro. And I did that really just because I thought it was kind of cool. He was talking about Luciano Pavoratii, which is the same name that I happen to go by. So it seemed like a fitting intro to, the videos that I do. But when I start to hear all this negative stuff about Donald Trump, I feel like I need to say something. And please, I know it's very polarizing when you have opposite views, but I want you to keep an open mind because I'm talking about the Idaho 4 case right now. And all of you out there that are seeing the injustices in this case and what's taking place, I think you need to understand something. And I need you to keep an open mind right now. Because this wasn't a local little Moscow PD conspiracy going on, okay? I mean, you had the Idaho State Police involved and the FBI was heavily involved because they have another investigation that's going on there as well. See, when you got a 4-county drug task force, that drug task force consists of people from different agencies. The local PD, the state police, and the FBI. Sometimes the DEA will even be involved in those drug task force operations. And when there's a big investigation going on, they got to keep a lot of things hidden. But when you get to the crux of things, when you look at these media narratives and where they come from, they're taking their cues not from the local guys, they're taking their cues from the big boys, okay? And when the big boys want them to push a narrative so that we follow along like lost sheep, they do it every single time. And that's not how things are supposed to work in this country. The government is not supposed to work with mainstream media to push narratives so that we follow along. There's supposed to be a separation from our news and the government, because it doesn't work when things start to marry in that direction. Then injustices start to happen, and it could happen to people like Mr. Kohberger, it could happen to you, it could happen to me. And nobody would be the wiser unless we start to figure this stuff out. And the reason that I'm talking about Mr. Trump is I'd like for you to listen to this short clip, because I don't see anybody else out there talking about how to fix the issues that we're discussing. So if you believe that Mr. Kohberger has had injustices done against him, well, then you need to keep an open mind, because I haven't heard anybody else suggest a fix for it other than this.
We will launch a major crackdown on government leakers who collude with the fake news to deliberately weave false narratives and to subvert our government and our democracy.
Okay, and this thing isn't over by far. As I've mentioned, they're already starting to prep the skids to try to change facts in this case. They're calling the PCA irrelevant at this point, saying it's not even important. Other facts have come to light with the alibi. They're going to try to change the time of the atrocity. I can see it coming. And we all have to be prepared, because when it's leaked to mainstream media and they start to put the narrative out there to change facts in the case, that's when it starts to get really serious. And we see it happening right in front of our face.
What is your alibi? What is your fake alibi? Who said that? What is your alibi? Now, notice of alibi is due. The state is asking, could you be a little more specific than he's just wandering around town? And the defense is now alluding to the fact they have witnesses that place Bryan Kohberger somewhere completely different than the crime scene on King Road, where 4 beautiful young University of Idaho students are slaughtered in their own beds. Where? Where is he at 3 a.m.? I can't wait to hear this. Witnesses? What witnesses? As I've told many a jury, nothing good happens after midnight. So where is Kohberger going to tell us he was at 3 a.m. at the time of the murders? And what witnesses are going to bail him out?
So in close, I want to get ahead of that, okay? Because I see it coming down the pipe. They're going to try to alter the time of the atrocity. I personally don't believe that the timeline of the actual atrocity is incorrect. I think it's probably pretty spot on. I think the events surrounding it are incorrect. And I'm going to show you why I feel that way in the video tomorrow that I mentioned. I see a way that this could have happened, and I'm not saying that Kohberger was involved in this way. If he was, it'll show how he was able to do it, and it'll make a lot more sense on how he was able to do it. And if he wasn't, it'll show how somebody that may have looked similar to him, more importantly, similar to his vehicle, was able to do it. And Mr. Kohberger is, again, just, he looked like the guy. And really didn't even look like the guy. His car looked like the guy's car. And that would be a terrible miscarriage of justice. And the more I dig into this and the more I see, I'm starting to see how that could possibly be a factor in this thing. Because I don't like the way things are going in this case as I see it now. But if you like my videos, please like and subscribe to my channel. Post your comments and your criticisms. Post anything that you would like to post. I certainly appreciate your posts. Now, at my sign off, you can go ahead and shut the video down. If you do not like Donald Trump, I understand. But if you do, I've got that entire speech that he did, and it was about a year ago on the campaign trail. It's only about 3 minutes, but it's a 3 minutes that I think you ought to hear. That'll come after my sign off if you choose to continue and listen to it. But once again, thank you for watching the channel. And Pavoratii, wait a minute. Pavarati's out.
I plan to dismantle the deep state and reclaim our democracy from Washington corruption once and for all. And corruption it is. First, I will immediately reissue my 2020 executive order restoring the president's authority to remove rogue bureaucrats, and I will wield that power very aggressively. Second, we will clean out all of the corrupt actors in our national security and intelligence apparatus, and there are plenty of them. The departments and agencies that have been weaponized will be completely overhauled so that faceless bureaucrats will never again be able to target and persecute conservatives, Christians, or the left's political enemies, which they're doing now at a level that nobody can believe even possible. Third, we will totally reform FISA courts, which are so corrupt that the judges seemingly do not care when they are lied to in warrant applications. So many judges have seen so many applications that they know were wrong, or at least they must have known. They do nothing about it. They're lied to. Fourth, to expose the hoaxes and abuses of power that have been tearing our country apart, we will establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to declassify and publish all documents on deep state spying, censorship, and corruption. And there are plenty of them. Fifth, we will launch a major crackdown on government leakers who collude with the fake news to deliberately weave false narratives and to subvert our government and our democracy. When possible, we will press criminal charges. Sixth, we will make every Inspector General's office independent and physically separated from the departments they oversee so they do not become the protectors of the deep state. Seventh, I will ask Congress to establish an independent auditing system to continually monitor our intelligence agencies to ensure they are not spying on our citizens or running disinformation campaigns against the American people, or that they are not spying on someone's campaign like they spied on my campaign. Eighth, we will continue the effort launched by the Trump administration to move parts of the sprawling federal bureaucracy to new locations outside the Washington swamp. Just as I moved the Bureau of Land Management to Colorado, as many as 100,000 government positions could be moved out, and I mean immediately, of Washington to places filled with patriots who love America, and they really do love America. Ninth, I will work to ban federal bureaucrats from taking jobs at the companies they deal with and that they regulate. So they deal with these companies and they regulate these companies, and then they want to take jobs from these companies. Doesn't work that way. Such a public display cannot go on, and it's taking place all the time, like with Big Pharma. Finally, I will push a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on members of Congress. This is how I will shatter the deep state and restore government that is controlled by the people and for the people. Thank you very much.